Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we've got something slightly different, no ride video unfortunately. Instead we're going to start looking at a problem with the fuel filter. So this is something that I had a problem with back in 2020 on the old Suzuki VL800, which was an intermittent spluttering issue. On the old bike I changed the fuel injectors and plenty of other things before I got to the filter. So with this one is different. I suspect, should I say, what the issue is. So we're going to get into the petrol tank and we're going to find the pump and the fuel filter. We're going to try and swap them out. As always with these bikes, nothing straightforward. Obviously, to get the tank off, we need to remove the seat, the side panels, and the clocks. And then we can get the tank out, flip it over, remove the pump assembly and the filter, switch the filter, and rebuild the whole bike. And then hopefully we'll be back to normal and everything will be running perfectly. The fun thing with these Suzukis is obviously having the fuel pump and the fuel filter in the petrol tank. I think long gone are the days of having a nice pump sitting under the seat with an inline fuel filter, which is so easily accessible. Unfortunately, it's not the case anymore, and everything's a bit more hard work. So, such is life, I guess. Here you can see I'm just removing the side panels. The tricky thing with these is that they need to push forward, so most side panels just popped off, but these things need to move forward, which makes them a bit more fun to get off because you need to pull out the lugs as normal, but then shift the whole thing towards the front of the bike. So it's just as always, a pain that you would expect. So the side panel on the left of the bike, the one I'm looking at now, this has the seat lock mechanism attached. So I'm not going to fully remove it, otherwise you need to take the whole mechanism apart just to get it off. So I'm just going to leave it hanging by the side of the bike. Just makes life a little bit easier when you're putting it back again. You don't have to fiddle around with all these cables as well, which is what I'm saying there. So the clocks on these bikes are removed with just one bolt, which is nice and easy. At the front of the clocks there's two little pins that just slide into a bracket on the actual tank itself, so that literally takes seconds to remove. For this one I didn't even remove the jumper cable from the clocks to the wiring loom. I literally just laid the thing next to the forks and it just hung there. So as you can see here, I've got the tank undone. I've got it propped up slightly higher at one end so I can look underneath. And from here I can clearly see the wiring loom attaching to the petrol pump, and I can see the fuel line going to the engine. The fuel line is just a simple squeeze and disconnect pull pipeline, so it's very easy to remove, and obviously the wiring is just a simple plug connector. So at this point you can see the petrol tank is fully removed from the bike. I'm just moving the camera, sorry about the flickering. So I've got the tank sat over in the corner here, I'm ready to go with it. So it's very low on petrol, which is nice, so I can just flip the tank over, not have to worry about draining it, and that will give us access to the petrol pump arrangement. So with the tank flipped over, we now need to remove this heat shield. So I've read that these can be quite fragile at times, so there's only 3 little clips that hold it in, so it's quite easy to remove it. I would just say just be very careful. I don't know how much these cost to replace, even if you can still buy one, I have no idea. But they do just come out very easy as long as you're a little bit gentle with them. So we now have the tank off, and it's flipped it over so we can see the fuel pump assembly. We can see where we need to get to. Check that there's no fuel leaking out of the petrol cap, which is good. My tank's very low on petrol as it is, so what we could do is flip the tank onto its end, and then the petrol would rush to the far end, and then you wouldn't lose any, but this is very low on petrol. I just need to mark off a line on this tank, and then I can remove the petrol pump. So it's very important that when replacing this, the pump goes in the right way around. So if you look closely at the bottom of the pump, I'm just getting a pen, you'll see there's a black line here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put a mark on the bottom of the tank at the same point, so that when I put this back in I can make sure that the two lines marry up and that I know the tank and the pump are in exactly the correct. So at this point we're ready to take the pump out. So it's just 5 bolts on the bottom of the tank. One of the bolts contains a retraining clip for the heat shield, so you need to remember to put it back in the right place. As you can see here, it's clear that I wish I had a decent workbench where I could clamp things down rather than just an old chest of drawers, but but it works. So these bolts, I believe, are meant to be done up with a torque wrench. I don't know if they were or not, but they weren't that tight. I could easily do them by hand. I also don't have a torque wrench, so when I do this up, I will just make sure it's as tight as I can possibly get it. So I'm just removing the bolts now. As you can see, that there's still that clip for the heat strap. We need to make sure that goes in the right place. There we go, just pointing that out. That needs to go back there. So I remove the remainder of the bolts by hand. Okay, so at this point the pump can be removed. There is an electrical connector inside the tank which is for the petrol gauge, so that needs to be removed. The whole pump and filter thing is a little bit fiddly. You need to sort of plan your way to pull it out of the tank and keep turning it and twisting it, as you can see here. It doesn't take a massive amount of time. It is just fiddly, and obviously everything is covered in petrol. So I think you'll see in a moment that I take the thing out probably in the next few seconds. It really is quite quick. The big thing is to remember that when you detach the fuel gauge wiring is to make sure it doesn't drop back into the tank and then you have to hunt around to find it. So there we go, the pump and the filter are out. I'm just detaching the fuel gauge cable now. That just sits at the side of the tank. I tip this back up because that boot over the filter is already containing petrol, so that just gets rid of some more petrol. At this point we have the pump and the filter out of the bike. I'm just going to show you now the new filters that I bought. I bought these on Amazon.com, so they came from America. I bought two. They cost me about $25, which is about the same in euros. The funny thing is it came with this packing slip, so I had a quick look at this packing slip, and it was supplied by a company called something like Hongen Motor Parts. So I'm assuming they're not genuine American, but never mind. So the filters are basically exactly the same. There is a very small little lug which you see me pull off in a moment, which you need to remove, which is a cap to stop dirt getting inside the filter. There we go. So yeah, two filters for about $25, so which is about 25 euros or around 20 English pounds. They took about a week and a half to get from America to mainland Spain, so that wasn't too bad. So at this point we're ready to start disassembling the filter from the pump. So let's get on with that. So first of all, we need to cut this cable tie that's holding this pipe back. So let's get rid of that, and then we can remove this pipe. This is a return pipe from the pump to the tank for when you turn the bike off. So this little boot, you need to empty that again. That might have some petrol in it. And then we can see here the filter. As you can see, mine's nice and black. So compared to the new one, look at that. You can see they're the same, exactly the same product. So they're very easy to remove. Actually, when I touched this, I actually felt there was actual debris actually stuck to it. So there's a lock-in washer on the front of here which we need to remove. So I'll just get a screwdriver and get that off. Be careful, this thing flies quite easily, as you will see. It disappears very quickly into my pliers. Thankfully it didn't go any further. There we go, that's off. Now to remove this, all you do is twist and pull up. And that's it. That's the filter off. We're now ready to put the new filter on. This is where things start to get really fiddly, because this is a very, very tight fit. So again, as you can see, I'm just getting the filter out of the box. Now I'll show you here how awkward they are to fit. So it fits exactly the same. You push it on and you have to twist so that it connects properly. But you can see here, so I'm trying to push that straight back onto the pump, and it doesn't want to go on. They are extremely tight fitting. So I keep persevering. As you can see, I even get the screwdriver at some point, I think, to try and push it on. But like I said, very, very tight to put on. So I found what you can do is take a very small amount of engine oil, just literally a few dots on your finger, and rub it around the entry point of the pump. This will help to get the filter to be seated correctly. So this is what I'm doing here. I've just got a very small amount of oil on my finger. I don't know why I look at that part of the pump, but there you are. So just rubbing it around that little entry point, cleaning it off my finger so I don't contaminate the filter too much. And as you can see, it's still really tight to get on. So, but obviously with a bit of oil, it will start to go on. So you see me down, twisting it in position. So I think it's not 100% seated correctly, so we need to push it on a bit more. Bear in mind, you still need to get the locking washer on. So this is where it is fiddly. So it looks to be about right now. So the locking washer needs to go back on again. Again, this is super small, super fiddly. So the screwdriver comes into play again. I think you see that it doesn't go on first time. No, actually, I'm still trying to get the filter seated correctly there. Now we put the washer back in. And a screwdriver to put the washer on. Twice. Well, it's good that Suzuki make these things so easy to deal with. I guess that's how to make more money, isn't it? Okay. So at this point, the locking washer's back on again. The filter's in place. All we need to do now is put the filter shoe back on, which is the return when the fuel returns back from the pump once you turn the engine off. So we put that in place. That just literally just hangs over the edge and clips over a pin. But we need to put a new zip tie on. So that black pipe needs fuel to run through it. So we can't have it super tight. So we want it tight enough that it's not flapping around, but we don't want it super tight that we can't get anything through it. It's been suggested that people can use metal zip ties for this. The fact that Suzuki used the plastic one is the same reason I'm using the plastic one. I assume that they know that plastic is fine immersed in petrol for a number of years. So, and there we have it. We're all back together again. The pump and the filter are all connected and ready to go back into the tank. So now we're ready to put it back in. So everything's ready and set. All we need to do is push this back in and fold it into the tank. Now I've heard, and I repeat, I've heard these are very tricky because you need to push the filter in, then the pump in, then twist it and turn it, and you need to get obviously the pump back in exactly the same place where it was. I've never done this before, so this is a bit of a learning curve. Obviously the other thing to remember is you still need to reconnect the petrol gauge sender wire. So this is it, let's give it a try. So we reconnect the sender wire now. And then we start to feed the pump in. So obviously it needs to sit at the very bottom of the tank. So the pump's gone in, the filter's in, the pump's now going in, and it's in. Now, I don't know if that's classed as awkward or not, but I didn't think it was awkward at all. It went in first time. I'm pointing out here there is a rubber seal that runs all the way around this, and when I took mine out, when I took the pump out, that seal slightly dislodged from its seating. So just to check that it is sat correctly before you put the pump back in and tighten it down, otherwise you will obviously have leaks. So at this point, there's the only thing I can do now is tighten it back up again. So everything's back in place. I've checked that the pump is aligned correctly as per the marking on the pump and the mark I put on the tank. So I'm now going to tighten it up, put the bolts in, tighten them up by hand, and then we'll come back and tighten them up properly. Bearing in mind that one bolt that I'm putting in there now contains one of the clips to hold the heat shield in. I remember saying we make sure we put that in the right one. So I'm doing this, as you can see, in a crisscross pattern, so as to not pinch or dislodge that that rubber seal, that O-ring, which seals between the tank and the pump. At the moment, I'm just doing these finger tight, so make sure they're correct. And then I'll come back in with a ratchet. As I mentioned before, this should be done, apparently, with a torque wrench to a set pressure, but I don't have one. I remember when I undone them, they weren't tough, they weren't really tight, so I will do them up to what I believe to be strong enough. And then the only way to really see if it works is to flip the tank over and see if you get any petrol leakage. So here we are, we're just nipping these back up now. I'm just going to release that one. I just need to change that clip slightly. There we go. Okay, so I'll just go around once more just to make sure they're nice and tight. Not overly tight, but also not super loose. Again, in a zigzag fashion, so I'm not going around in a circle. And finally, what I think is the last one. Seems to take forever when you're just talking about it. Double checking them again just to make sure. Okay, so that's it. Everything's back in place. The only thing we can really do now is turn the tank over and see if we get any petrol leaks. There's not a lot more we can do with this at this point. So that's it. Actually, I stand corrected. The first thing you do is put the heat shield back on again. So just going to go and grab that. So the heat shield just clips in with 3 little clips that holds it in place. As long as you put that last clip in the right place when you bolt up the pump. That's it. So now we flip the tank over. Now you can see that there is liquid dropping on the floor between my feet. So it's quite common that obviously this thing is filled with fuel again. So I'm watching now to see if this carries on dripping. I think we had 4 drips and then it just stopped. So I'm assuming that when we turn this over that the fuel just ran into the normal pipe and was dripping out of there just through gravity. It stopped after 4 drops. I left it there and I didn't see any more petrol fall out of it, so I was quite happy that was clear. So with the bike back together, we're now going to prime the fuel pump, and the best way to do that is to multiple times allow the fuel pump to start and then stop. So we're going to turn the ignition on, put the kill switch off. Then what we'll do is we'll turn put the kill switch on so that the pump primes. We'll then wait for it to finish. Then we'll turn it off and wait for it to finish again. And we'll repeat this 4 times. That way we know that the fuel pump is the fuel pump is fully primed. So I'm just going through the motions here of like turning the kill switch on and off. It's a slow, laborious process, but it helps. It just makes sure that there's nothing there's no air or anything in the fuel pump. So we go through this now. I'm just going to check, just to double check again to make sure I can't see anything dripping. So we're all good. There's actually a storm raging outside now and there's thunder blaring, which is what I just pointed at there. So, but we know we're good for the fuel line. So everything seems to be working correctly. The fuel gauge is working again. So we're going to start the bike now. We're just going to run the bike a few revs just to get the fuel pump circulating the fuel back through the system again. And then we'll allow it to just settle back down to a tick over. So in the next clip, hopefully we'll have sound for the engine, as long as YouTube don't ban me the video again. So again, we're just allowing it to just run, tick over, a little bit of revs, just up to 2,000, then back down to tick over again. And we seem to be in a good place. I can't see any issues. It's now ticking over perfectly. Okay, so one last check before we carry on. I just want to make sure there's no fuel drips under the bike. No, perfectly clear. It's all good. Going dry. Just fire it up once more, just see what it does. And there we have it. Ticking over at a steady just under 1,000 revs. Better than it was before. So just to show again. This is what we brand new, and this is old. Completely ruined. If there's ever a lesson to be learnt about using decent petrol, this is it. This is it.